I wasn't the kind of man who dreamed of family barbecues or picking out nursery colors. I came into it late. By the time I met Vanessa, she already had a daughter, Aubrey, 9 years old, sharp-tongued, and loyal to a father who didn't stick around past her 5th birthday. Still, I tried. I wasn't perfect, but I was present. I paid for school uniforms, endured awkward school plays, and stayed up late trying to help with algebra I barely remembered. Vanessa always said she admired that about me, my patience, my steadiness. But the admiration never made it into the way she treated me behind closed doors. It was like I was appreciated, but never respected. Like I was a placeholder, standing in for someone whose absence made him more myth than man. Her father, Aubrey's biological dad, wasn't involved in any real way. He'd pop in every few months with a box of Dunkin' Donuts and a story about how work's been crazy. He was the kind of man who wore his failures like they were quirky personality traits. And yet, somehow, he remained a hero in their eyes. I never stood a chance against the fantasy of him. Aubrey would light up when he called, and Vanessa never once shut that down. Instead, she encouraged it. She needs her dad, she'd say, looking at me like I should understand. I did understand. I just didn't agree that his need for redemption should be paid for with space in my home. This year, Aubrey turned 16. Vanessa wanted to throw a big party at our house. Balloons, music, a rented tent in the backyard. I didn't argue. I even offered to foot the bill for a caterer so nobody had to worry about cooking. But when I heard Aubrey mention that her real dad would be coming, I stopped cold. "Excuse me?" I asked. "Coming where?" Aubrey shrugged, flipping her braids behind her shoulder like I was the one being dramatic. "Here. Mom said it's cool. He's just gonna swing by for a bit." I turned to Vanessa, who looked down into her wine glass like she'd found something fascinating in the bottom. "You told her that man could come to my house?" I asked, my voice low and even. She didn't even flinch. "He's her father. It's her birthday. Why do you always make everything about you?" I could feel the tension in my jaw before I realized I was clenching it. I stood there, trying to slow my breathing, to think before I spoke. "I'm not comfortable with him being here," I said finally. "You want her to see him? Take her to a coffee shop. Take her to the damn zoo. But he's not coming into my home." That's when she rolled her eyes, a gesture so familiar now it barely registered. "You're being insecure," she said, then paused, like she was about to put the final nail in the coffin. "You can't have your own child, and you're jealous of him. That's what this is." I stared at her, stunned. The words didn't even sting at first. They echoed, hollow, as if spoken into a canyon. It took a full 10 seconds for the weight of them to land. And when they did, all I could do was smile. Not the kind of smile you give when you're amused, but the kind that comes when you've finally seen something clearly for the first time. I turned and walked out of the room without saying another word. The truth is, I had never wanted to admit how deeply that wound sat inside me. The inability to have children. It was the result of a medical complication from years ago, and while Vanessa always claimed it didn't matter, she never missed an opportunity to weaponize it when angry. But this wasn't just an argument. This was a reveal. She had finally said the thing I always suspected she believed. That I was less than. That my value was conditional. That I was only as good as the space I could fill in the absence of someone else. Later that night, I sat in my car outside the gym, engine running but unmoving, staring at the fog forming on the windshield. That's when my phone buzzed, just once. A message from her. "Elise, Vanessa's best friend. Saw your face at the party planning dinner. You okay?" She always knew how to read me, even when I tried to play it cool. Elise had been around for years, Vanessa's sounding board, her brunch partner, the one who always took her side in debates. Or at least I thought she did. But lately, it was like she'd started seeing things differently. Or maybe I just started noticing how often her eyes lingered when I spoke, how she'd lean forward just a little more than necessary during our conversations. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at her message and felt something shift in me. Not lust, not even revenge. Just clarity. Someone saw me. Someone cared. And it wasn't the woman I shared a bed with. I finally texted back. "Not really. Just tired of pretending everything's fine." She replied instantly. "You don't have to pretend with me." The party went on without him because I stuck to my word. He wasn't allowed in my house, and Aubrey didn't speak to me for days after. Vanessa sulked, muttering under her breath and slamming drawers for dramatic effect. I let it all pass over me like static. Something in me had gone quiet. I no longer felt the need to explain myself or argue. I had made a decision the moment she weaponized my pain. And once a man decides to reclaim his dignity, everything changes. That night, I made myself a drink, turned off my phone, and sat in silence. I thought about all the times I compromised, all the sacrifices I made to be the man she said she wanted. And I realized none of it had ever been enough. Not because I wasn't enough, but because she wasn't capable of appreciating someone who loved without conditions. I raised someone else's child, paid bills that weren't mine, swallowed insults like vitamins, and still came home every night hoping to be chosen. And for what? That smile I gave her when she insulted me? That was the smile of a man who realized he had nothing left to lose. I didn't plan for it to happen with Elise. It wasn't some long-brewing affair or a secret fantasy come to life. It started slow, almost unnoticeably. A text here, a call there. Late-night conversations that felt more like therapy than flirting. What drew me in wasn't her beauty, though she was beautiful, but the way she listened. Not the kind of passive listening Vanessa gave me when she wanted to hurry me through a story so she could return to her TikTok rabbit hole. No, Elise listened with her whole body. She looked me in the eye, nodded at the right parts, asked follow-up questions. She gave a damn. And when a man spent years in a house where he's tolerated but not heard, real attention feels like oxygen. A few days after the birthday debacle, I found myself parked outside Elise's condo. It was almost 11 p.m., and I knew how it looked, how it would look if anyone saw me. But I wasn't there for sex. At least that's what I told myself. I just needed to talk. Needed someone to remind me I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the villain Vanessa painted me to be. I texted her, "You up?" She responded with an address and 3 words that undid me. Of course I am. I knocked on her door like a man unsure of his own strength. She opened it wearing sweatpants and a faded Bowie t-shirt, hair piled on top of her head, no makeup, barefoot. And I swear to God, I'd never seen anyone look more effortlessly disarming. We sat on her couch, sipping tea like we were in a scene from a movie that hadn't been written yet. I told her everything. How Vanessa's words had gutted me. How Aubrey barely acknowledged me anymore. How lonely it felt to live in a house full of people who never truly saw me. Elise didn't interrupt. She just nodded slowly, offering the occasional Jesus or "I'm so sorry," but mostly she let me unravel. When I was done, she set her cup down and reached across the couch. Her hand found mine. "You deserved better than that," she said quietly. "You still do." I could have left then. Should have. But her touch lingered, and the silence between us was thick with something unsaid. I leaned in first, hesitantly, almost asking a question with my eyes before my lips even brushed hers. She didn't pull away. Her hand came up to my cheek, and the next thing I knew, I was drowning. Not in lust, not even in love, just in relief. For once, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I didn't have to brace for sarcasm or coldness. I could breathe. We didn't rush. It was slow, intentional, wrapped in years of unspoken connection. When it was over, we lay there in silence, not ashamed, but solemn. She rested her head on my chest and whispered, "You don't have to go back tonight if you don't want to." I stayed. I expected guilt to hit me the next morning. I braced for it like a wave that never came. Instead, I felt calm, resolved, like the truth had finally pushed through the noise. I didn't go home until noon the next day, and Vanessa didn't even notice I was gone. She was busy on a Zoom call, sipping coffee from the mug I'd bought her for our 3rd anniversary. No kiss, no greeting, just a quick glance and a "Did you pick up dog food?" I smiled again, same one as before. The kind that means something inside you has snapped for good. Weeks passed, and Elise and I continued to see each other in secret. We weren't reckless, but we weren't exactly careful either. It wasn't just sex. We talked about everything. What we'd do differently in a relationship. How we both ended up side characters in someone else's drama. She told me about her past. A man who cheated on her with his coworker. How she'd promised herself she'd never fall for another taken man. "But you're not taken," she said one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not really. She let go of you a long time ago." She just didn't have the guts to say it. Then came the moment that changed everything. Elise called me one Sunday morning, her voice shaky. "Can you come over? It's important." I drove like a man possessed. She met me at the door with a look I couldn't read. Not angry, not scared, just solemn. We sat down, and she handed me a small white envelope. Inside was a pregnancy test. Positive. I looked at her, trying to process it. "Is it mine?" I asked, instantly regretting the bluntness. Her eyes welled up. "Yes, of course it's yours. I haven't been with anyone else. I wouldn't do that to you." The room felt still. Not heavy, not light, just suspended in time. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the street below. I thought I'd panic, that I'd feel cornered. But instead, I laughed. Just once, dry and short. "I'm going to be a dad," I said, more to myself than to her. She nodded slowly, tears now streaming freely. "I know it's messy," she whispered. "I didn't plan this either. But I'm not sorry." I turned to her and crossed the room in 2 steps. "Neither am I." Telling Vanessa was not some soap opera moment. I didn't scream. I didn't even accuse. I waited until a quiet Thursday night when Aubrey was at her friend's house. We sat in the living room, TV playing some reality show she half cared about. I muted it. She looked over, annoyed. "What?" I cleared my throat. "I got someone pregnant." Just like that. No build-up. Her face twisted slowly, like her brain was playing catch-up with her ears. "Excuse me." I repeated it, calmer. "I'm having a baby. With Elise." Her jaw dropped. She stared at me like I'd spoken in tongues. Then came the rage. She threw the remote across the room. "You bastard. With my best friend? Are you insane?" I stood unmoved. "You called me insecure. Said I was jealous because I couldn't have a child. Now I can. And I'm going to be a father. That's all there is to it." She screamed that I'd betrayed her, shattered everything we'd built. I reminded her that she shattered it first. Every time she treated me like an outsider, every time she undermined me in front of her daughter, every time she made me feel like I was just a warm body filling space. "You didn't lose me over Elise," I said coldly. "You lost me the night you reminded me I wasn't enough." Vanessa didn't cry the way I thought she would. She wasn't devastated. She was enraged, unhinged. Like I had taken the carefully stacked house of cards she called our marriage and flicked it off the table in one swift motion. "You selfish, disgusting bastard," she spat, pacing the room like a trapped animal. "You threw away everything for what? A mistake?" I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded, calm in a way that only someone who's already said goodbye can be. "She's not a mistake. And neither is the baby. You just didn't see this coming because you thought I'd never stand up for myself." Her eyes narrowed. "You're pathetic. She's using you. She wants what I have." I laughed then, low and bitter. "What exactly do you think you have, Vanessa? A husband who's ignored? A household where I pay the bills and sleep on emotional scraps? You can keep that. Elise gave me something you never could. Respect." That was when she changed tactics. Her voice dropped to that cold, calculated pitch I'd heard her use on customer service reps and Aubrey when she was in trouble. "You know what? Fine. You want to be a father? Go play house with your side piece. But I'm coming for everything. This house. Half of it's mine. Your accounts? We'll see what the lawyers say. You think you're going to humiliate me and just walk away clean?" I didn't blink. I already had the documents ready. A prenup she signed back when things were still romantic, when she thought marrying a man with money was a guaranteed security plan. She thought I'd never enforce it. She was wrong. I walked to the hallway closet, opened the lockbox, and pulled out the folder. I tossed it on the coffee table. "Read it and weep," I said. "You get nothing." Vanessa froze. The way her eyes scanned the fine print, darting from clause to clause. It was like watching someone realize the brakes had been cut too late. She slammed it shut and stood. "You planned this," she hissed. "You were waiting for a reason to leave. You set me up." I shook my head slowly. "No, I was waiting for you to prove you didn't love me. And you did. Repeatedly. This just gave me the push to stop pretending." The days that followed were war. Cold, bitter, exhausting war. She called her mother, her sisters, 3 mutual friends, and told them I had cheated on her with her best friend. No context. No backstory. Just a headline designed to turn everyone against me. For a while, it worked. My phone lit up with judgmental texts. How could you? You're disgusting. Vanessa gave you everything. I didn't reply to any of them. Let them talk. Let them pick sides. The truth didn't need a publicist. It would speak for itself in time. And more importantly, I didn't owe anyone an explanation, not after the years I spent silently swallowing my own dignity. Aubrey, for her part, was volcanic. She barged into the kitchen one evening while I was packing a box of my books, eyes rimmed red, fists clenched. You ruined her, she screamed. She loved you. You were supposed to be different. I set the box down gently and looked her dead in the eye. I was different. I stayed. I supported. I protected. And she walked all over me. I'm not going to keep being a doormat just because it's convenient for everyone else. She laughed bitterly. You just wanted to get back at her. Admit it. I sighed. No, Aubrey. I just finally realized I was the only one sacrificing anything in this house. After that, I made the decision I knew would seal it all. I called a locksmith, changed the locks, had her served. It wasn't a dramatic exit. No screaming, no dishes thrown. I packed her things into storage containers and left them in the garage. When she came home and found the front door wouldn't open, she stood outside yelling for 10 minutes straight. I watched from the upstairs window, not hiding, not smirking, just watching. When she finally got the message, she stormed off, probably to go spin a new story about how I was abusive or unstable. I didn't care. The truth was, I was done being her emotional punching bag. I had protected her and her daughter, provided for them, put my own needs on the back burner for years. And in the end, I was disposable. Not anymore. My lawyer made quick work of the legal mess. The prenup held up in court, as I knew it would. She cried in the judge's office. Claimed I manipulated her into signing it. Claimed I used her. The irony was almost laughable. The same woman who treated me like a wallet with legs now playing the victim because the ATM shut down. Aubrey refused to speak to me after the court ruling. She sent one text, just one. You're a monster. I hope you rot. I didn't respond. What could I say? I had loved her like my own for nearly a decade. But in the end, she saw me the same way her mother did, as replaceable. Moving on wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, even with Elise. There were nights I sat in my new apartment, lights low, and questioned everything. Not the decision itself, I didn't regret that, but the years I had wasted. The memories I had to now reclassify as lies. The laughter that suddenly felt performative. The family I thought I was building that turned out to be a scaffolding of pretense. Elise tried to understand, but she couldn't fully. She hadn't lived in that house. She hadn't felt the slow erosion of self-worth over years. Still, she was patient. When I told her I needed time before we moved in together, she didn't argue. She just nodded and said, I'll be here when you're ready. And then came the baby. Elise's belly started to show, and something in me shifted. It wasn't just the pride of becoming a father. It was the sense that I was finally building something real. Uncomplicated. Chosen. I started going with her to appointments, reading books about fatherhood, researching schools even though we had years before it mattered. I wasn't just reacting to the past anymore. I was investing in a future. A clean one. A life where I wasn't a placeholder or a last resort. I was the father. The partner. The man building his own legacy from the ground up. The silence in the new place was different. It wasn't heavy like the quiet that used to hang over me after an argument with Vanessa. It was clean. Open. Like fresh air after a storm. No slammed doors. No passive-aggressive comments dropped like crumbs. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the hardwood. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. I'd spent so long surviving inside a house that looked like love from the outside, but felt like judgment on the inside. Now I had a 2-bedroom apartment with nothing but a mattress on the floor and a half-assembled crib waiting in the second room. Some nights I'd sit in the dark, a beer in hand, and just listen. To the quiet. To the steady rhythm of nothing falling apart. That silence became my sanctuary. It meant I wasn't being tolerated. It meant no one was rolling their eyes while I talked. It meant peace, and I hadn't realized how starved I was for it. Elise came over often, usually with bags of groceries and that soft energy that made everything feel manageable. She didn't push. She didn't ask when I'd be ready to move in together or what my long-term plans were. She just showed up, cleaned the kitchen, rearranged the baby stuff, cooked enough food to last the week. I told her she didn't have to, but she'd just smile and say, I know. That's why I want to. And I believed her. For the first time in years, I felt wanted, not for what I could provide, but for who I was. We'd sit on the couch at night, her belly gently rising under her hoodie, and talk about everything. Music, childhoods, the name of our child. I was still healing, still guarded, but with her, I didn't feel like I was bleeding all over the furniture. She gave me space to be broken and didn't try to fix me. She just stayed. The backlash came fast and loud. Vanessa made it her mission to scorch every social circle we'd ever touched. My barber wouldn't make eye contact during my cut. The pastor at our old church stopped responding to my emails. One of Vanessa's cousins even showed up at my apartment complex and shouted up at my window like this was some kind of soap opera. You left a good woman for her best friend? Really? I didn't respond. Didn't even get off the couch. Let them talk. Let them carry torches. I wasn't living in that house of mirrors anymore. Their outrage didn't stick because it wasn't rooted in truth. It was rooted in the version of me Vanessa needed to create so she wouldn't have to look in the mirror. But it still hurt. One afternoon, I ran into Aubrey at the grocery store. I was grabbing diapers and prenatal vitamins, trying to get in and out before traffic. I saw her before she saw me, headphones in, hoodie pulled up, browsing the frozen food aisle. I should have turned around. Should have taken it as a sign. But something in me needed to face it. I walked up, slowly, cautiously. Aubrey, I said, my voice softer than I expected. She looked up and froze, her face darkening instantly. You've got some nerve, she said, crossing her arms. Shopping like you didn't destroy everything. I exhaled. I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to say I still care about you. She laughed. Loud. Bitter. Care? You abandoned us. You betrayed Mom. You cheated with her best friend. And now you're playing dad with some random baby? You're pathetic. I nodded slowly. Took it. Didn't argue. You're allowed to be angry, I said. But I didn't abandon anyone. I just stopped being someone's emotional punching bag. She scoffed. You were never enough, so you replaced us. I swallowed hard. No, Aubrey. I finally chose myself. She rolled her eyes and walked away. I stood there for a moment, in front of a wall of frozen waffles, heart pounding. The words didn't hurt because they were true. They hurt because they weren't. She didn't understand. Maybe she never would. And maybe that had to be okay. I got back home and found Elise on the couch, rubbing her stomach with one hand, a blanket thrown over her legs. She looked up at me with concern. You okay? I dropped the grocery bags on the counter and sat next to her. Ran into Aubrey, I said. She winced. How was it? I shrugged. Like being accused of a crime I didn't commit by someone I still love. Elise rested her head on my shoulder. You didn't commit a crime, she said. You finally stood up for yourself. That's not betrayal. That's survival. I nodded, but the ache stayed. There's no guidebook for what to do when the child you helped raise sees you as the villain in her mother's tragedy. Over the next few weeks, things started to shift. Slowly, I painted the nursery a soft sage green, built the crib, installed blackout curtains. Elise and I picked names. We argued, sure, about little things, but there was a softness to it. No one trying to win. Just two people figuring out how to love each other without stepping on bruises. One night, she turned to me in bed and said, I know this wasn't how you imagined becoming a dad. I looked at her, my hand resting on her stomach. No, I admitted. But I think it's how I was meant to become one. There was one moment that really stuck with me. It was a Sunday. I was wiping down the counters when Elise called out from the couch. Hey, he kicked. I dropped the rag and rushed over. She grabbed my hand, placed it on her belly, and there it was, this tiny, unmistakable thump. My child. Alive. Real. A part of me. I didn't cry. Not then. But later that night, when Elise had fallen asleep, I sat in the nursery and let the tears come. Not from sadness. From release. From knowing that all the pain, all the betrayal, all the noise had led me here. To this quiet room. To this clean slate. To this baby who would never have to wonder if he was truly wanted. I knew I'd be judged forever for how things ended with Vanessa. People love to choose sides, especially when there's no camera showing the behind the scenes. But I also knew this. I had done the work. I had stayed when I should have left. I had loved through cold shoulders and cutting words. And when I finally chose to stop bleeding for someone who wouldn't even hand me a bandage, I didn't do it out of malice. I did it out of self-preservation. And now, for the first time in a long time, I was building something real. I should have known she wouldn't go quietly. Vanessa never accepted defeat with grace. She wore revenge like perfume, noticeable, lingering, and impossible to ignore. I got the first whiff a month before Elise's due date. A friend from work sent me a link to a Facebook post that had been shared dozens of times. "Just read this," he said, no context. My stomach sank before I even clicked it. There it was, a long, dramatic paragraph written by Vanessa, public for everyone to see. She painted herself as the devoted wife who had been blindsided by her husband's affair with her best friend, betrayed not once but twice by the two people she trusted most. She included a photo of us at a charity event, smiling, from 2 years ago, captioned, "I thought we were building a life. Turns out I was just background noise in someone else's story." The comments were brutal. Strangers calling me a narcissist. A few of her friends suggesting Elise had always been jealous and finally made her move. One woman wrote, "Men like that always find a way to play the victim." Another added, "He'll cheat on her too. Just wait." I didn't respond. Not publicly. But I read every word. Not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted to know just how far she was willing to go. The answer, all the way. She was waging a one-woman war for sympathy. And in the process, she made sure to torch every bridge I hadn't even realized was still standing. I showed the post to Elise later that night. She read it twice, her expression unreadable. Then she set the phone down and said, "Let her have her audience. You have your family." I nodded, but part of me still burned. Not out of regret, but anger. Anger that I spent years shielding Vanessa from the world, from judgment, from her own worst instincts. And the second she didn't get her way, she turned the world against me. This wasn't heartbreak. This was performance. This was her trying to control the narrative after losing control of the man. But things came to a head one afternoon when I got an unexpected call from Aubrey's school counselor. Apparently, Vanessa had been speaking at a local community panel on betrayal and rebuilding, and had used her experience as a talking point, naming names. Elise's name, my name, even Aubrey's. The counselor said students had been whispering about it, that Aubrey was visibly upset in class. That was the first time I felt something shift in me, not toward Vanessa, but toward Aubrey, because now she was being dragged into something she hadn't asked for. I might have lost her loyalty, but she was still just a kid, and Vanessa was using her like a pawn. I called Vanessa that evening. I wasn't angry, just firm. "You need to stop dragging people into this," I said. "You can hate me all you want, but leave Elise and Aubrey out of it." She laughed, actually laughed. "You think you get to tell me what to do after what you did?" I stayed calm. "No, I'm not telling you. I'm asking, for your daughter's sake. She didn't sign up for this mess." Vanessa's voice turned cold. "She signed up the moment you walked out on us." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "No, Vanessa. I walked out on you. Not her. And we both know that's not the same thing." She hung up without another word. A week later, I came home to find Elise sitting on the floor of the nursery, folding baby clothes into neat little stacks. The light through the window hit her face just right, and for a second, I saw the whole future. Late nights, first steps, scraped knees, family dinners, tired smiles. She looked up at me and said, "I think it's time I moved in." I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I think so too." It wasn't just about convenience anymore. It was about solidifying this new chapter, making our home feel whole. The move happened quietly. No fanfare, no Instagram announcements, just a slow merging of lives. Her books on my shelves, her spices in my cabinet, her toothbrush next to mine. It felt easy in a way love never had before. Not because we didn't have baggage, we did, but because we didn't weaponize it. We talked about our fears, our regrets, the shame we both carried. She told me about how Vanessa used to talk about me when I wasn't around, how she'd joke that I was nice enough, just too needy. Elise always hated that. She said she never knew how much it bothered her until she saw how I really loved someone. Then came the final confrontation. Vanessa showed up at my apartment complex, unannounced, loud, unapologetic. Elise was at a prenatal appointment, and I had just come back from the store. She cornered me in the parking lot, hair wild, eyes full of fury. You think you won? You think this little fantasy family of yours is going to erase what you did to me? I didn't respond right away. I just stared at her, letting her words land. She wasn't here for answers. She was here to perform. I waited until she paused for breath. No one won, Vanessa. That's the problem. You're still playing a game I stopped playing months ago. She stepped closer. You humiliated me. Made me look like a fool. And for what? Some charity case with a baby. That's when the anger flared. I stepped forward, lowering my voice. You want to talk about humiliation? You humiliated me for years. Undermined me in front of your daughter. Weaponized my infertility. Treated me like a visitor in my own home. And now that I've found happiness outside of the circus you built, you want to drag me back in? Not happening. Not ever. She stared at me, mouth open, as if the weight of her own cruelty had just registered. You changed, she whispered. No, I said. I healed. She left after that. No more screaming. No more threats. Just silence. I never saw her in person again. I held my son for the first time on a rainy Thursday afternoon, and nothing, not the chaos, not the judgment, not the years I'd spent trying to earn someone else's love, mattered anymore. He came out screaming, fists curled, already making demands of the world. And I looked at him, all 7 pounds and change, and whispered, "You'll never have to earn love. Not from me." Elise was exhausted but radiant, her hands still gripping mine even as the nurse placed our child in her arms. We hadn't settled on a name until the day before. Now it was carved into my soul, Mason Elijah. My son. Mine. Not biologically in the traditional sense, but there was nothing in this world that could convince me he wasn't mine in the only way that counted. He was the fresh start I didn't know I'd been bleeding for. The hospital room was quiet in the hours after. Elise slept. Mason dozed on her chest, and I sat in the corner chair watching them both like a sentry. That was when everything caught up with me. All the noise I'd spent the last year dodging, Vanessa's betrayal, Aubrey's hatred, the public smear campaign, suddenly felt distant. Not gone, just dulled. Like background static after the storm has passed. I thought I might feel guilt, or maybe some lingering anger. But what I actually felt was peace. The kind of peace that comes not from perfection, but from choosing your own damn life. Messy, complicated, and real. I hadn't stolen happiness from anyone. I'd clawed it out of the wreckage of a life where I was constantly being asked to shrink so someone else could shine. We went home 2 days later, and the house felt different. Not just because there was a bassinet in the living room and bottles on the counter, but because there was life. Elise's laugh bounced off the walls. Mason's cries filled the silence that used to weigh heavy on me. Even the air felt lighter, like the rooms had been waiting for a family that fit. I spent hours walking the baby around the apartment, whispering things I never said out loud before. You're safe now. I'll never leave you in the dark. You don't owe me anything except to be yourself. Maybe I was really saying those things to myself, too. The gossip didn't stop, of course. Vanessa kept trying to revive the narrative. She posted photos of her and Aubrey smiling at brunch, captioned with little digs like, "Real love doesn't cheat," or "Strong women raise strong daughters." But the more she posted, the more obvious her bitterness became. People stopped engaging. The likes dropped. The sympathy dried up. Even some of the people who initially took her side started peeling away. I didn't gloat. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was doing its own quiet work in the background. Aubrey never reached out. I thought she might, after Mason was born. But weeks turned into months, and nothing came. I saw her once, from a distance, in the parking lot of a shopping center. She was laughing with a group of friends, carefree, unbothered. I stood by my car for a moment, watching, heart caught somewhere between pride and sorrow. She was growing up. I hoped she was healing. I hoped, one day, she'd understand that I hadn't walked away from her. I had just stopped pretending for her mother. That I still loved the version of her that used to curl up next to me on the couch, whispering secrets she didn't trust anyone else with. But I also knew that love, like people, sometimes changes shape. And letting go doesn't always mean giving up. Sometimes, it means accepting what you can't fix. Elise was everything Vanessa wasn't, and not just in the ways people expect. She didn't worship me or make me the center of her world. She challenged me. She called me out when I was impatient or defensive, but she also listened. She also apologized. She also made space for my fears without mocking them. And I did the same for her. We didn't pretend to be perfect. We just promised not to pretend at all. That became our vow. Honesty, even when it was messy. Especially then. One evening, I found myself standing at the front window, Mason asleep on my shoulder, staring out at the quiet street below. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over everything. Elise came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "He has your stubbornness," she said, kissing my shoulder. I smiled. "He's going to need it." She looked up at me, serious now. "You don't talk about her anymore. Vanessa, are you really over it?" I thought for a long moment. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am. Not because I've forgotten, but because I'm not carrying it anymore. She can have the past. I've got the future." The next morning, I sent Vanessa a final email. Not long, not angry, just closure. I wrote, "I'm no longer available for this war you keep trying to fight. I've moved on. I wish you peace. Please stop involving me in your hurt." I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. That was fine. The email wasn't for her, it was for me. A door officially closed. A chapter sealed. A final act of release. Fatherhood changed everything. Not just because of the sleepless nights, or the tiny socks, or the way Mason gripped my finger like he was anchoring me to earth, but because it gave me purpose. Real purpose. Not performance. Not obligation. Not appeasement. Just love, raw and unfiltered. The kind of love I used to give away to people who didn't value it. Now I was giving it to someone who couldn't even say thank you, but who felt it, lived it, breathed it. And in that, I was healed. Sometimes I still think about the version of me who stood in that kitchen while Vanessa told me I was insecure, that I couldn't have kids, and was jealous of a man who'd never stuck around. I think about how I smiled and walked away, not because I was weak, but because I was done. That moment was the beginning of everything. Of choosing myself. Of refusing to stay where I wasn't seen. Of walking towards something better, even if I didn't know what it looked like yet. That smile? It was the first boundary I ever built that held firm. I look at my life now, and I don't see revenge. I see redemption. I see proof that peace is worth burning a few bridges for. That love, real love, doesn't ask you to shrink. It asks you to show up. And I did. I showed up for myself, for Elise, for Mason. And I'll keep showing up, every day, because I finally understand what it means to be chosen, and what it means to choose myself. Have you ever been accused of being the villain just because you finally chose yourself? Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. If you've ever had to burn a bridge to protect your peace, drop your story in the comments. Let's talk about what healing really looks like. Raw, painful, but absolutely worth it. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true life stories that dig deep into family, betrayal, and the boundaries we build to save ourselves. See you soon in the next one.